Okay, I have time today. And when I say I have time today, I don't mean that as a passive aggressive, ooh, I got time today. Nobody, this is not personal towards anyone. I literally mean I have time before I go into work, so I could talk. So I got time to talk about the Texans. Um, for those who know me, and most of y'all don't, I've been a Texans fan my entire life. And really, any sports team, even the sports I don't watch, I'm just like loyal to Houston. So I don't watch baseball or basketball because I'm just not a fan of the sports. But I'll whenever the Astros win, I'll give them their props. Rockets. I want these teams to do good, even though I don't, I think their sports are an insult to athleticism. But that's a discussion for another day. Uh, Me, I'm more of a football, the other football that people call soccer. Yeah, yeah. So the Texans really are giving me hope. We're predicted to do good this year. I try not to read too much into that because otherwise, I become a Cowboys fan, obnoxious, just and arrogant, and that's the last thing I want to do. And what interests me about the Texans this year is that we finally have an interesting story. Uh, we're finally like a team that even our rise to glory has been an interesting story. And I had to like explain this to my coworkers the other day. We don't watch football, but like some of them are Houston fans like me, and if we go back to 2 years ago, how we got here in the first place, it's it's a pretty crazy story. Uh, any football fans know that 2 years ago, Lovey Smith was the coach for the Texans. Um, he was named the coach after David Culley got fired. He was a coordinator for the Ravens, and he came to the Texans, hired Lovey Smith as the defensive coordinator. And Lovie Smith always had like was like a guy for the players. He was very loved by the players, and I think that's the most important part. Um, and so when they decided to move on from David Culley after the Deshaun Watson situation, they traded him anyway. I guess they believe that in hiring David Culley, they would have retained Deshaun, but we all know that would have been a bad idea. Um, so David Culley after 2021 was out the door. 2022 was they named Lovey Smith, and it was more of a they hired from within. So he goes from DC to head coach, and this is where the story picked up. Now that year, 2022, the Texans were looking to tank. Now when the team tanks, it's mainly in simple terms, tanking means you lose on purpose. So when you pick in the draft, you get the number one overall pick. Uh, Speaking to non NFL fans, the draft is basically where there's a lottery for the not a lottery, but every NFL team has a chance to pick a college player, and the team with the worst record gets to pick first in the draft. And that's what the Texans were trying to do. Now, this isn't uh, incongruent with the players, because the players and the coaches, anybody on the field doesn't want to lose. Let's be honest with that. No team of 53 guys and all the personnel that are on the field ever want to lose on purpose, but it's more of a front office strategy. So the general manager, the owners, everybody who works in the front office, they set the team up for failure. They trade away anybody who's good, and they diminish the team of any contributing players that could factor in to win. And that's what was going on in 2022 with Lovie Smith. He takes over. The front office completely had the intention of sabotaging the season in order for us to pick first. So the season goes along. Down to the last game of the season, we were playing the Indianapolis Colts. So it's Texans Colts at Indianapolis. We're playing an away game. All good. And it is pretty much known that Lovie Smith is going to get fired at the end of the season, which means after the end of the game. So after this game, Lovie Smith is no longer going to be is no longer going to be the head coach of the Texans. And what happens in this game was crazy. He literally gave the finger to his bosses, won that game down to the last second. I think I'll go on YouTube and look up Indianapolis Colts versus Texans. I think back we were still at 18 games a season, so week 18. And the very last play, Hail Mary attempt, they win the game. Lovie Smith gave the Houston Texans, his bosses, the finger on his way out the door because you don't shit can, like, decency aside, you don't shit can somebody that way. That's not a good way to fire nobody. So that defiance made him like a Houston legend. So now he screwed the team over, or maybe more like he screwed the front office, because I'm pretty sure the players would players like them. No ill will towards the players and the coaches. So what then went on to happen was, instead of picking first in the NFL draft, they picked second. And in that draft, the Bears had number 1. They took Bryce Young, and we ended up taking C.J. Stroud. 2023 Rookie of the Year. So, in and of itself, Lovie Smith became a Houston legend then and there. Just for that reason alone, because in defiance, it all worked out for the better, and it's an amazing stroke of luck how we ended up here. And now I'm trying not to get my hopes up. Texans are predicted to do good. Another interesting Houston story that that went on last year is that when the Tennessee Titans, who used to be the Houston Oilers before the Houston Oilers moved to Nashville, Tennessee. I love this story, and it's very interesting to me. They moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and with that, they took the team name and color. After probably a season or two, I could be wrong. This happened sometime in the 90s, I believe. They switched the team because Oilers was synonymous with Texas. All the money in Texas is oil money. So they changed. So in Tennessee, they changed their name to the Titans, and they changed not only that, the uniform as well. And the uniform they switched to was one of the ugliest uniforms I've ever seen. The numbers were ugly. They had white helmets. They wore some baby blue, but they switched over to navy blue and white primarily. And it was just like this ugly uniform and this corny name with a corny logo. It was like, I never liked this about the Titans. But maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years back, they had another uniform. They had a uniform change, and they look much better now. But fast forward 2023, the University of Houston, which is not an NFL team, it's a college team, wore Oiler-inspired uniforms they're still, the Houston Cougars, but they wore the powdered blue, that's mainly the color that's associated with the city of Houston. The Rockets got a couple years ago powdered blue, and last year the University of Houston, their football team switched came out with these alternate uniforms, powdered blue, red, and they looked really good. It was a nice looking uniform that was very popular with the fans. What then went on to happen was the Tennessee Titans, along with the NFL backing them, and I could be wrong about this. You might have to do your own reading on it, but I think this is the gist of the story. Along with Tennessee Titans, with the backing of the NFL, the organization sent over a cease and desist letter to the University of Houston in regards to the uniform colors, saying we have no right over the powdered blue color, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You try to take ownership of a color. No other team ever does that. The Arizona Cardinals don't send cease and desist to 100 universities that use the color red in their uniforms. And if you watch college football, it's a bunch of red teams. Teams that wear red. I'm talking Alabama, and that's the most famous one. It's just all these teams that are red or white. Alabama, Arkansas, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Stanford. And those are just the ones in the Power 5. Those are just the big ones. It's just ridiculous how they try to... It's not as extreme as Nestle trying to own the rain, but it's kind of ridiculous that this organization is trying to take ownership of a color. The University of Houston's response, along with the Rockets, the Texans, and I'm not sure if any other team jumped on this bandwagon, decided to, like Lovie Smith, give these people the finger and wear the powdered blue anyways. That the Texans came out with new uniforms and they have a powdered blue variation, which is awesome. And the Tennessee Titans are been kind of shitty about it too. Last year they wore their Oilers uniform twice. Once against the Texans, and for one, we beat them that game. It was just poetic justice. I think J.J. Watt even tweeted about it because he retired the year before last, and it was almost poetic justice. Come to think of it, I think the cease and desist letter came right after that game. So now the Tennessee Titans... Hold on, let me turn this down a bit. I think I'm yelling into the mic. The Tennessee Titans probably sent the cease and desist right after losing to the Texans, making them look which makes the entire organization look bad. It's very childish. It's very petty. To think you're a $1 million franchise in a $1 billion industry, and you're resorting to child's play that way. It's crazy. It's petty. And I love what Houston is doing with with all their sports teams in defiance. I have a piece of presidential trivia I want to share. Who is the who's the first president to die in office? First president to die in office. That would be President William Henry Harrison. I believe this was pre-Lincoln. Of course, it's pre-Lincoln before first president died in office, so it would be pre-Lincoln's assassination. First president to die in office, William Henry Harrison. Also, actually, the story behind this is pretty entertaining. So, oldest president elected into office at the time at 68 years old, which in 1840 in the 1840s had to be like that's like that's got to be like 80 today. Um, After he was elected president, all the media and the newspapers, the print media would talk about was his age. Like, is he really at his age? Is he really fit to be? They called him a geezer and whatnot. So his response to that was he wrote the longest inauguration speech, like to this day, ever. Longest inauguration speech, over 8,400 words, I believe, and spoke for over 2 hours. The day of his inauguration, it was also raining, it was windy, and it was cold, and he still spoke for the entire 2 hours. Like I said, to this day, longest inauguration speech ever. And just died 2 weeks later or something from pneumonia, which has got to be the most depressing way to go as president. Not including assassination. Then it would, like, after that, Lincoln was assassinated. Then James Garfield assassinated. Then after that, I think it was JFK. But first president to die in office was William Henry Harrison. Died at 68, 1 month into his presidency. And back then, did not do anything in office. That was just his term. Matter of fact, his vice president was either, I think his vice president Tyler also set the precedent, not president, but became president and set the became president and set the precedent of the vice president takes over. Matter of fact, after that he was hated by all of Congress because that was not a rule back then. They wanted to have another election, but no, he didn't have that, and he was ineffective as a president because of that. The Congress would never let him do anything, which is a fact. And stories like these fascinate me because I always look at presidents as like historical, interesting personalities. I see them as like these characters in movies. Like, I like a good Martin Scorsese film. You see like Taxi Driver and Goodfellas, and like you look at the characters and what they bring to the story. Quentin Tarantino does the same thing for his movies. Like, every character has like its own personality, and their personality drives the storyline. So much so that whenever when Jamie Foxx spoke about doing a movie like Django, which is one of my favorite movies. It's probably my favorite movie of all time. And I used to think that, scripts were when making movies, actors are flexible, they improvise some, they change, there's a lot of script rewrites as the movie's a work in process. But Jamie Foxx revealed that Quentin Tarantino has this way of, like, he has this vision of a character and wants to, from the dialogue to the person to the behavior, the mannerisms, everything that shows up on camera, he has a vision for it, and he wants to to reflect that. And that's one thing Jamie Foxx spoke about. I'm pretty sure that the interview, people have seen the interview before. So, this election season, I think that's what one thing I want people to remember, that policy aside and politics, it's just too complicated and too much of a like a concoction to like even keep track of anything and to have like any type of like formal opinion, because you're not going to have like all the facts. we're not gonna know anything. All you could do is like look at these people as personalities, and that should be what we go to. Well, we should look at, one of my favorite comedians, Louis C.K., described the story in such great detail about how he used to call the White House, and like the way he described it, like, so funny. I might try to retell it, but I might butcher it and get some of the details mixed up. And I actually recently would retell the story to my friends and family, and like I would laugh maniacally because I just couldn't get it out. But the story was like Louis C.K. He said he would call the White House, that he used to call the White House during the Obama administration, and someone would, like, they literally answer the phone like, "Hello, White House, call center," or not the call center, but whoever is whoever is the person whatever department at the White House receives the phone calls, and he would go. I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to make up a complaint." He'd make his complaint, and you figured, okay, and at least you get a response like, "Okay, I'll make sure I send this up or whatever." And you think they jot it down, and it's one out of trillions or however many complaints the White House might receive. But then he said he did the same thing during the Trump administration. Not only that, he called in the midst of the election while Trump was losing Georgia, and he was and around the time he was like scouring for votes. Around the same time he made that phone call when like, "I need you to find me more votes," or whatever. Anyways, in the midst of the election, he called the White House, and and the guy answered the phone, so, "Hello, White House," and you could just hear he hasn't shaved in a couple of days, and he just undid his tie. You could hear it in his voice. I was like, "Hello, I'd like to make a complaint, and could you just go to the website? Go to the website, please." Like, yeah, just go to the website and put your complaint there. Like, "Is everything okay?" I was like, "No, not really, not really at all." "Well, I hope your day gets better." "Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot." And to think that that's what makes it funny. He then goes on to describe the like what must have been going on in the White House. Like, this is supposed to be like the utmost organized a building in the world. There has to be some type of order, but to think that the White House call center is functioning like a State Farm insurance agency office with only 3 people, and the phone just keeps ringing. "The phone's been ringing. Somebody get the phone. It's been ringing." For like past couple of weeks, I've just been laughing nonstop of just the imagery of that story, just picturing it in my mind. But I guess that's all. I'm gonna wrap it up for this week, or plenty of weeks. Finally, my order came in for a second microphone, and I will be able to have a guest on here, so I'm not just on here ranting to myself. Hopefully this thing will garner some type of momentum and like grow into what I would like it to be. But for right now, it's just like this is just my little pet project that I just love doing, because I'm just a little poet. I'm a little poet ranter. That's all I am. I'm just having fun out here. Alright, y'all have a good day. Y'all be safe.